to be filming my August reading wrap-up. Bookish with Mariah. I'm so hyped to have you all back here on my booktube channel. So I am going to be talking to you all about all the books that I read for the month of August. So on my August TBR, I've said several times before that August is a very busy month for me as an educator that works at a university in higher education, and I have so many students, and I work at a major university, so our campus is flooded with students right now. And so I have been so busy this month, but I actually got a chance to finish almost all of my books on my August TBR. So I started the month with 9 books on my TBR, and I actually finished 8 of them. And I feel like accomplished. At first I was kind of like upset with myself because I was like, oh no, I didn't finish that last book. So I have one book that I DNF'd, but that is only because I just ran out of time. It wasn't because I didn't like the book. It wasn't because the book wasn't going well. I am loving the book, and I'm actually still in the middle of reading that book right now, and I'm 200 pages into it, so I should finish it in the next 2 days. But I just ran out of days of the month, and so that book I did not get a chance to finish. But I'll talk to you all about that very, very soon, about which book I had to DNF, just for a moment. Alright, so I do have my reading journal right here. So if you're familiar with my videos, then you know I always have my reading journal close just in case I forget something. So my reading journal is here. So if you see me looking down, that is because I'm looking at my journal trying to remember what I'm supposed to say. Right, so for genre and rating, so for genre, I read 3 dystopian books / post-apocalyptic type books, 1 urban fantasy, 3 YA fantasy books, and 1 that I think I would consider it's like young adult contemporary. So those were the genres that I read. As far as the ratings for this month, I read, and this was so hard to rate some of these books because I had a really great reading month, but okay, here goes. And some of these ratings might change, to be honest, because I read quite a few books that are a part of a trilogy or a series or a duology. So if I read the second book and I start to understand things a little bit better, I might either raise or lower ratings. So we'll see, and I'll let you all know if I decide to do something like that. But anyway, as far as ratings, I read 3 5-star books, 3 4.5-star books, 1 4-star book, and I had 1 3-star book. So I'm going to get into the books, and I'm going to talk about them in, I don't know which book I should do first. Should I do the ones I love the most first or the least? I think I'm going to talk about the books that I love the least first. And I don't want to say least because I enjoyed my books that I read this month, but there were like at least 1 that had a 3-star that I just wasn't feeling that much. So I'm going to first talk about the DNF book so you all can know which one that is, and then I'll go into the 3-star book. Alright, so the first book that I wasn't able to finish, again, this book I didn't get a chance to finish because I just ran out of time, and I had a really busy month, and it was just the last book on my list to read, and I just ran out of time. But I'm 200 pages into this one. I'm actually really enjoying it, so I DNF'd it just because I didn't get a chance to finish it in the month of August. Today's the 31st, and I doubt I'm going to finish it today. So that is Far From the Tree by Robin Benway. Since I didn't get a chance to finish all of it for the month of August, it's going to be the first book on my September TBR. So I am going to finish it. It'll be in September for sure because I'm already 200 pages into this one, and I am really enjoying it. It's such a sweet story. Right now it's following 3 characters that have been split at birth, basically because they have grown up in the system. You have one of the characters, the male, he's grown up in the foster care system, and then the other 2, they were in the system as far as like foster care, but then at birth they were able to get adopted into different families. So they don't know each other, they've never met, and you are basically following their journey in connecting with each other, possibly meeting each other, and then they may go on a journey to find their birth parents. And so I think it's a really beautiful story so far. I'm enjoying all of the characters as I'm meeting them. Like I've told you all before, I'm adopted, and I have a lot of siblings out there in the world. I grew up by myself because the family that adopted me, I was the only child, just like a lot of these characters in this book. one of them grew up as an only child. So seeing that character basically learn how to have a sister, that is so interesting and such an interesting dynamic, because I'm like, wow, I probably would feel the same way about a lot of the like situations her and her sister get into together and how they interact with each other and talk to each other. They're so sassy the way they talk to each other and like tease each other, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's what it's like to have a sister, I guess, because I wouldn't know. I don't have any, so, or brothers, so I don't know what it's like. But reading it in this book, I think it's so special, and I'm really inspired by this book, and I'm definitely going to be finishing it in the month of September. All right, so the book that I gave a 3-star to, which this may be some people's favorite. It wasn't mine per se, but if you loved it, definitely comment below, or just if you've read it, let me know your thoughts on this book, because I don't know, I had a few issues with it, but I enjoyed it enough to where I feel like I might like pick up the second book. So anyway, that is coming in at a 3-star review for me, like rating. It was 3 Dark Crowns by Kadari Blake. So this one is following 3 sisters. So you have 3 different perspectives, and they're living in 3 different parts of the kingdom. At birth, they were basically, by the time they were like 4, 5, or 6 or something, they were separated to go live in different parts of the kingdom based off the type of magic that they were born with. So you have one who's a poisoner, one who is like a naturalist, and then the other one is like, I can't even remember, like an elemental type of magic or something like that. But they go and they are raised until they're 16 years old in those different parts of the kingdom. And then when they get old enough at 16-ish, they go into this ceremony to where they have to kill each other. And whichever sister is still living at the end of this whole shebang that they go through, then that is going to be the new queen. And that queen and the king, that part of the kingdom basically takes over everything. So interesting concept. I would definitely label this a dark fantasy because there was some heavy things happening in here. The action was pretty cool in here, so I was entertained by that, and I enjoyed the characters and learning about them. There was, so yeah, okay, I enjoyed the characters and learning about them. Okay, issues I had that made me give it a 3-star. I had some problems with like filler. Like I felt like there was certain parts in the story that random tangents that the author would kind of go off on with explaining things, and I felt like it was just not needed. And I'm thinking to myself, like, maybe I was trying not to be so critical because this is the first book in like a trilogy or a series, and so I know maybe some of my questions or concerns will probably be answered in another book, but for a first book, I don't know, those tangents like bother me a little bit. Like I felt like one of the queens wasn't even focused on that much because they kept focusing on her best friend so much, and I'm just like, why are you doing that? And they focused, and the author focused on her best friend's love story, which also bothered me. Then another thing I didn't care for was insta love. Oh my gosh, I am not an insta love kind of girl or a reader, and so the insta love happened in here. I felt like it was so unnecessary, and I really felt like it took away from the story because there were certain parts in here that I felt like could have been really great, but once that insta love hit, I was like almost done. So I didn't like that. And then when the big, how do I say, ceremony came along, it was intense and there was some really interesting things that happened, but I felt like some of the queens, like power and things that they did to express their magic could have been a little bit more, like could have stood out a little bit more. It just, I don't know, it just didn't live up to the hype to me when it came to like that final big ceremony they kept working toward getting to. And now the ending, I will say, interests me enough to where I might pick up the second book, but I'm not saying I'm like rushing to Amazon or Book Depository to hurry up and buy it, you know? So I'm gonna pick up the second book before this year is out because I'm interested, but it just wasn't my favorite, so I gave it a 3-star. All right, so the next book I read is, this one is Fracture Me, and it is book 2.5 in the Shatter Me series. So I am reading the novellas in between the books, like the Shatter Me books. So if you're familiar with the Shatter Me series, there's like I think about 6 or 7 books. I could be wrong on that number, but it's about 6 or 7 books. But in the middle of those, there are small novellas that you can read to give you a different perspectives of characters, which I have absolutely enjoyed doing. So this book, Fracture Me, I read and I enjoyed it. I gave it a 4-star. It's the lowest I've ever rated one of the Shadow Me books or the novellas to say. But the reason why, it's nothing to do with Tahari Mafi and her writing and the way she explained the story in here. None of that. What it was the character that it followed. I don't prefer this particular character right now, and he's really irking my nerves. So if you've read the Shadow Me series, you probably know which character I'm referring to, but I can't say, because if I do, then that would spoil it. But I would say it followed a certain character that I feel like is being so whiny right now in the series, and he has a lot of good reasons because he's been through a lot and traumatized, and I get it. But basically, this book was a whine fest of him just whining. And so I gave it a 4-star because Tahari Mafi's writing is insanely good. And also the way she explained what this character was going through was awesome. I absolutely loved it. I'm glad I read it because it gave me a good perspective on that character, or it confirmed what I already knew. He is whining. And really, I just didn't give it a 5-star because I just did not enjoy reading this character's perspective, but I'm glad that I did. I hope that makes sense. Like, I'm glad I read it, but the character got on my, like, all of my nerves. But if you're not familiar with the Shadow Me series, I've talked about it so many times on my channel before, but basically it's a dystopian, post-apocalyptic type book, and you are following Juliet, who's the main character, and she has a fatal touch. Anybody touch her dies, or she touch someone, she dies, and there's a lot of people in this world right now that has the abilities to do amazing things. And basically they're fighting against the government because the government, which is called the Reestablishment, has basically taken over the world, and they are trying to create a one world order. And basically this group of young individuals, or just this group of like a lot of different individuals from different walks of life, come together and they're fighting against that government. And so this follows one of those characters, and I just was like, ugh, this person is getting on my nerve. But definitely check it out. I would say if you're reading the Shadow Me series, check out the novellas because they do add so much more to the story. Alright, so the next book I read is one I'm so happy that I finally picked up. It is Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. I gave this book a 4.5 star. I really enjoyed it. I was so happy that I picked it up, and I finally read an Elizabeth Acevedo book. If you've read it, please comment below because I would love to know your thoughts on this one. And yes, so this book followed the perspective of 2 characters. You have Yahara, and then you have Camino. I think I'm saying that correctly. And both of them are sisters. They have the same father but not the same mother. One of them grew up in the US in New York, and then you have another one that grew up in Dominican Republic. And both of them don't know each other. They're not aware of each other. They don't know each other's lives. Like, they don't even know each other exist. And so their father has spent his time like half in the DR, and then you have him half in the United States parts of the year. So he is basically telling each family like, oh, I'm traveling for business, when really he's spending his time with 2 different families, and he has a different wife in one place and a different child in another place. And so he's basically living 2 like double lives. And they don't know each other. And so he dies, you know, and all of this isn't spoilery because you can read all of that on the back. He passed away, and basically it leaves like this big void, this big hole, because then you're thinking like, okay, I need to make funeral arrangements, I need to get things together. But then it all just kind of goes crazy when these 2 girls are faced with a really tough situation and a whole lot of decisions that they have to make for a father that they find out that they really did not know. They thought they knew him. They thought they knew like the New York him or the DR him, but then they find out they don't know him at all because he was hiding so many secrets. And I love the way Elizabeth Acevedo did it, and her writing is absolutely beautiful. I love the way the girls were described and their personalities and who they are. I also enjoyed following them and the way they like kind of processed everything and how they were thinking as they were going through it. So I really enjoyed that aspect. The only reason why this book wasn't a 5-star read is because I felt like some parts of the book took way too long to get to. Like the last couple chapters was when everything felt like it was just starting to kind of like puzzle pieces coming together, but I felt like that took way too long to get to, and I wanted just a little bit more of that relationship. And so I don't want to say what relationship or how, just because I don't want to spoil anything, but I will say I just wanted a little bit more of that relationship, and I think people that has read this understand which relationship I'm talking about. And I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a beautiful book, like two sisters that are growing up somewhere completely different, and then all of a sudden their worlds collide with each other because of such a traumatic event. And I also like the way Elizabeth kind of touches on like the mental health, like what happens when you go through grief, like how someone is processing grief of someone that they loved so much. How does grief affect the whole entire family, and then the way you are processing it and the way you feel, and also the way people look at you when you're going through grief. It is something else on what they had to work through. So I gave it a 4.5 stars. I'm definitely going to read more of Elizabeth Acevedo's work, and I really enjoyed this book. All right, so the next book I read, which was a 4.5 read for me, which is The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. I'm so happy I finally got to pick up a Holly Black book. I really enjoyed The Cruel Prince, and I enjoyed so much of this fairy world. Now, when fairies are described in other books, I've always saw them as like a sweet, kind, mystical type of book, like, or character or creature. Oh my gosh, in here it was brutal. It was cruel, and it was hard to read in certain aspects. Like, I was cringing reading certain parts of this book, and the main character that it follows is Jude. Jude is a human. Her sister Taryn is a human, and then you have Vivi, who is a fairy, and she's also their sister. Their parents raised them in the regular world, like the regular world that we live in, and they were basically kidnapped and brought to fairy world. The reason why they were kidnapped because their parents were killed. And it's so unfortunate because I can't say what their parents were killed for, but their parents were killed. And so then they're taken to go and live in this palace with a commander, and he has a lot of power and control, and obviously a really high title. And here poor Jude is living in this fairy world, and she's a human. Human are treated like second-class citizens, not even second-class citizens, like really bad, just really poor. Like, they are they're easy for it's easy for humans to get tricked by fairies, or they're not immune to fairy magic. So someone could like cast a spell on you and make you do things you don't want to do because your body as a human is not immune to what's going on in the fairy world. So Jude goes through a whole lot of strife, a whole lot of things that she's going through mentally, physically. She's literally living with the man that killed her mother and her father, so that's trauma in itself. And then she's having to deal with a lot of emotional abuse, physical abuse from being bullied based off of being a human in a fairy world. And so you basically following her through that trek of what she's going through. But there's so much more to this book that ends up happening to Jude, and I was so surprised. I didn't give it a 5-star because I will say there's some things about Jude's character that I didn't care for too much, but I tried to be sympathetic about what she was going through and how she is. Obviously, I like a real badass warrior, and I think that's, for me, that's just what I like. And yeah, that's just it. And I think for Jude, like, she was brave and she was really like badass, but in some ways I felt like she cried so much. Like, whew, it was a lot of tears in this one, but I can understand. But it was really her going through like the realization of the people that she thought she knew wasn't the way she thought they were, and it was just a lot going on. But I would absolutely say this is worth picking up. I 100% plan to pick up book 2. I'm not sure if I'm gonna pick it up in the month of September because I need to order it and I don't own it, and it'll take a while to get here, but I do plan to pick it up very soon because I enjoyed The Cruel Prince, and I'm so excited that I finally read a Holly Black book. So I gave this one a 4.5 star. All right, so the next book that I read with a book club called Simply Reread, and it is run by Kaylani Simply Me. I'll link her channel below, and she runs that book club. And we read for the month of August, we read Scythe, which is by Neil Schusterman. I loved this book. It was so much fun to read. So this book follows two main characters. You have Citra and you have Rowan. This is a world, like a dystopian type of post-apocalyptic world, to where you just cannot die. You can't die here. So there's no car crashes, no sickness, there's no disease, none of that. People just don't die. So the world has basically conquered death. And so if you die-ish, you go to this place called the Revival Center, and they basically bring your whole whole body back to life. Some people even turn what they call turn a corner, and they are young again after they go through this experience, or they get a certain age and they can turn a corner where they can push the clock back. So you could be 50 years old, you can go back to being 25 if you want. And so the only way you can die is if you're killed by a scythe. And scythes are pretty much very respected in the community. People don't bother them. They don't kill a scythe. There's heavy penalties to pay if you do kill a scythe. And scythes are pretty much appointed. And so Rowan and Citra turn into being like a apprentice for a scythe. And they did not want the job. They didn't try to get the job. They end up being apprentice for a scythe. And I don't want to say how they got that, because that is spoilery. But anyway, you're basically following them going through this whole entire like journey to become a possible scythe. And I really enjoyed the story. I enjoyed both characters and learning about them and who they are, the families that they come from, because they both come from two different families and the expectation from each family is different. I absolutely loved their personalities, like each one of their personalities, and I respected that. I loved the scythe that was training them to become a scythe. He was phenomenal. And so I really like the storyline. I will say, trigger warnings, it's brutal. It's brutal. It's about death, people dying, and so much going on in this world. I did have a few questions that haven't been answered yet in here, but I think, of course, once I read the second book, which I plan to, I will then be able to answer my questions for this one. So I absolutely loved it. I thought it was phenomenal. I gave it a 4.5 star because I still have a few questions, or there was some gray areas in some parts, but for the most part, I thought it was absolutely phenomenal. It definitely kept me on my toes. It was a page turner. I can't talk. It was a page turner, and definitely one of my favorites. I will say I am so blown away at how much I really truly love this book, because it wasn't on the top of my radar to read, but I'm so happy that I was in the book club and I was able to pick up a book that I wasn't planning to read for the month of August. And since I was in that book club, I read it and I so enjoyed it. So I would say, if you like dystopian post-apocalyptic books with a really like a twist and a lot of thrill, I would absolutely highly recommend picking up Scythe. All right, so now it's time to get into my top 3 books of the month, which are my 5-star books for the month of August. And it's so hard to do a countdown for my top 3 because they were all so stinking good, but here it goes. So coming in at number 3 is going to be Ignite Me by Tahereh Mafi. This is the 3rd book in the Shatter Me series, and oh my gosh, I know I give Tahereh Mafi like every book in this series a 5-star, but this was, it was insane. It was so stinking good, you all. This one has got to be my favorite one so far that I've read in the series, and that is so hard for me to like truly admit out loud, but oh my gosh, the character Juliet in this book just blows me away. So many of the other characters blow me away. It is insane. It's phenomenal. It's a beautiful story. I've already explained in a recent clip of what the Shatter Me series is about, as far as it being a dystopian post-apocalyptic book, and they're fighting against the reestablishment to try to fight against this one world order that the government is pushing on them. This was phenomenal, and I cannot wait to get to the next book. I'm definitely going to be putting the next book in my September TBR. So just go ahead and expect, if you watch my channel regularly and you're thinking about like, oh, I wonder what book is going to be on Mariah's TBR. Well, this is the 3rd book. Just go ahead and add all the Shatter Me books for the rest of the year to all of my TBRs, because I got to finish this series before the year is out. I loved it. It was a 5-star. The writing was beautiful. The characters was done perfectly, and I absolutely enjoyed it so much. So please, if you haven't if you started this Shatter Me series and you haven't continued, I highly like encourage you to like give it another go, because it gets just better with time, and it is phenomenal. Easy reads, easy to flip through. Tahereh Mafi's writing style is so easy to read, and I am enjoying it. I know I'm late to the game. A lot of people have already read these, but I'm so happy that I'm just getting onto it and I can just binge read all of them, and I don't have to wait for a new book to come out. So definitely 5 stars. All right, so coming in at number 2 for my favorite book that I read this month, which if you are in like shelf space book club, which is run by Jessie May. I will leave her channel and information for that book club below. Then you already know what I'm about to say because I joined the live show and clearly I loved the book. And that is going to be The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin. It was phenomenal. I absolutely loved the book so much. Now I know there's some people in the world that didn't really like it. I know some people that DNF'd it. I know a few people that stopped at the first few pages and DNF'd it. It was for me. So I would say N.K. Jemisin's writing is not for everybody. Let's start there. So the first 100 pages kind of had me confused, and it's very easy to get lost in the first 100 pages and give up on this book, but I thought it was stunning. And let me tell you why I thought it was stunning. Let's first start with the fact that I am really a character driven type of a reader. So like the plot and the twists and stuff I get excited about, but if the characters are done really well and I'm able to focus on the characters, I actually love the book even more. So this book was really character heavy because it followed the perspective of 5 different people, and I loved that so much about this book. So this book is an urban fantasy. It is taking place in New York. It's following 5 characters that are now avatars of those cities, different parts of New York. And so you have the Bronx, you have Queens, you have Brooklyn, and you have Manhattan and Staten Island. So you have 5 different perspectives, and later on you have someone else, but I can't really say that because that's spoilery. But anyway, you have those different characters. They are now an embodiment of that city, so they have become the city. They're avatars of that city, if that makes sense. So let's say like something new comes in the city, or there's a building being destroyed in the city, they can feel that, and they have these magical abilities. So each one of the people are given like some kind of ability, and every time an avatar is reborn, they're given a new ability. So you have one that's really into like history, and she knows all the history of the avatars and what's going on. Then you have another character that can project like this force field or something over the whole city. You have one that's really good at math, one that's really good at art, one that has a connection with music. So I really loved how the art forms was used in this book, which absolutely I enjoyed the music and the art. That was wonderful. And I loved just the concept of it. This book dealt with a lot of different social justice issues, and for me, as soon as I see that, I'm automatically interested in a book. So for me, I absolutely adored that part of it, which kept it so wonderful for me. There was some holes in this book that were a little bit gray, and some questions I still have to ask myself about this book, but I will say that I do plan to continue the trilogy, and so far, at least for the first book, this was my first N.K. Jemisin book. I gave it a 5-star, and I really truly enjoyed it. I will say it's not for everybody. Again, N.K. Jemisin writing is not for everybody, and I really respected the way that the social justice issues was handled in this book, because I felt like it wasn't overbearing. Some books that I read that deals with a lot of those, that can deal with a lot of those issues, in my opinion, sometimes it gets really overbearing when you deal with so many issues at once, because this book dealt with like 5 different type of issues, and so I felt like that added to the story. So before this clip is like 100 minutes long or just super long, I'm gonna be doing a book review on this particular book because I just loved it that much. Obviously I've annotated it to death, and because I love it so much, and I'm gonna be doing a separate book review about this one because that's how much and how passionate I felt about this book, and it was great to me, and definitely a 5-star read for me. I would highly suggest maybe looking into it and picking it up, and let me know what you think. If you've read this book, let me know what you think, because I really want to know, because it was definitely one of my favorites and highlights for August, and I'm so happy that I read it with Shelf Space Book Club, because the Discord service was so fun to participate in, and also the live show. So check out Shelf Space if you haven't already. All right, so my #1 book that I have read for the month of August, which this one was a 5-star read. Obviously, it also was my biggest book. It was 500+ pages, but every one of those pages I just absolutely adored, and that is Strange the Dreamer by Lani Taylor. This one was so good. I have a few tabs here on the side for this one too. I just loved it. I loved it. Again, I'm a big like character driven person, and I felt like focusing on the main character was just so, I think that's is what won it over for me. Laszlo, him as a person was just so beautiful because of his personality. He was very sweet, very kind, very honest. He genuinely wanted to do the right thing at all times. He cared about other people's feelings. When someone was doing him wrong, he never retaliated against that person. He always continued to treat that person with kindness. And I think I loved it so much because, to be honest, this character reminded me of my husband. So I think that's why I loved it so much, because that is like so describing Travis, who I'm talking about on my channel all the time. You all hear me mention my husband a lot, but that is basically how he is, you know. So looking at Laszlo, I'm like, oh my gosh, I see this person every day, really, because that's exactly how Travis acts. He's just so nice and so sweet and kind, regardless of what people say or if they do something. He's always very, very sweet, and that's how Laszlo was. And I love characters like that, that's just genuinely really good people. And Laszlo was just wonderfully written. So this story follows the character of Laszlo, who grows up as an orphan. He first grew up in a monastery with a lot of monks, and then he is able to leave the monastery and go to live in a library. And it is where he discovered, he discovered the ancient city of Weep. When he was at the monastery, there were a couple of monks that told him some stories about the ancient city of Weep. And when he was very, very young, he also had a dream that, I think it was about the city of Weep. So this city hasn't been visited in like 200, 300, 400 years. It's just, think of the city of Weep like Atlantis. Like, nobody's been to the ancient city of Atlantis right now in 2020. But if they say like, oh, we've discovered the city and you can go visit, people will be running to hurry up and go visit Atlantis, because it's just that big of a mystery. And that's how the city of Weep is. So he spent his whole life doing research on this city, and he has invested so much time into collecting artifacts and learning about the city of Weep, because he's just so passionate about it. The city of Weep was his childhood and the way he grew up, because of he's learned about this mystical, magical place to have magical beings. Because right now he lives in the world to where there's not really any magic or anything around, and people has looked at magic as like a myth. So then there's an opportunity for Laszlo to visit the city of Weep, and things get interesting. That's all I'm gonna say, because I don't want to tell you all about what happens in here, but I would just say the relationship that Laszlo develops with someone in the story is so beautifully done. Like, I just love those two characters in the way that they are put together. Like, it was beautifully done. Oh my gosh. And I love the way the story is described. I love the way each character is described, and I just really felt the relationship between Laszlo and someone else. I don't want to say who that someone else is, but it's someone else, because I want it to be a surprise for people that pick it up. But it was beautifully done. Like, I really felt like I could see the visual of everything Lanny Taylor was trying to describe during the time where Laszlo was with someone else and going on these adventures with someone else. I thought it was just absolutely beautiful. And so it is phenomenal. I loved Strange the Dreamer. I'm going to be picking up Muse of Nightmares, and I'm scared because I've heard mixed reviews about Muse of Nightmares, and I've heard people say that they loved Strange the Dreamer way more than Muse of Nightmares, but I'm still picking it up. But I'm so happy I picked up this book. I'm so happy it was suggested to me by Jessie May, and it was absolutely a great choice for August and a phenomenal read. So for sure, this was hands down my favorite book of the whole month, and definitely a 5-star. All right, so that is all for my August reading wrap up. Thank you so much for joining me for this video. I was so excited to do it because let me fix my camera, okay? I definitely had a really good reading month for sure for August. It was so much fun. Like, the books that I read, I was so happy that I got to them. I was able to start new series and trilogies and whatever duologies for the month. So I'm really hyped, and I'm looking forward to continuing, oh my gosh, most of those books for next month or months to follow really, really soon. So I'm really looking forward to those. So thank you so much for joining me. If you've read any of these books, please don't forget to comment below. Also, don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Bookish with Mariah, because of course I would love to have you guys join me there. And if you've read any of these books, definitely give me all your feedback, because some of them I'm still like up in the air about how I feel, but I'm pretty confident in the way I feel about some of them. I know I'm going to be doing a review for The City We Became. I'm also going to do one for Strange the Dreamer, but I actually want to wait until after I read the second book for Strange the Dreamer in order to do a full review on how I felt about both, because I kind of want to do those together. But I enjoyed all my books for the most part for this month, so thank you so much for joining in. Definitely check out my upcoming video for my September TBR so I can let you all know what I'm going to be reading for September. So far, the books that I've picked are really fantasy heavy, so I'm trying to like break that up into something else. So I'm definitely going to be filming a video for you all soon and uploading it so you can see what I'm reading for the month of September. I'm participating in several readathons. Oh my gosh. So I am just like, oh my goodness. But I can't pass up some of these readathons because I'm excited about the themes and what they're about. So definitely follow my channel so that way you can be up on those too. And I will see you all in the next video. Okay, bye.